Most of these inequalities do manifest in gender-based violence, and gender-based violence actually manifests much more than often in domestic and social settings. So,
Hello everyone, and today on our show we are talking about gender-based violence. You realize that in Midlands Province, gender-based violence cases are rising every day. And recently we had a woman who was murdered in Vuma for only $5,000. It's a very unfortunate incident, and I hope that we learn more about gender-based violence. On our show today, we have Marjorie Makonere. She is a human rights activist. She'll speak more on gender-based violence. Over to you, Marjorie.
We have many forms of gender-based violence, dzinosanganisira domestic violence. Munova mu-domestic violence ndomatinowana muine mabehaviour ekutyisidzira, ekuvhundutsira, ekumanipulata, ekukuvadza, ekunyadzisira, ekubhlemana, kukuvadzana kana kutourayana chaiko. Anyone can be a victim of domestic violence, regardless of age, race, gender, sexual orientation, faith, or class. Domestic abuse can be mental, physical, economical, or sexual in nature. It can cause serious physical injury or death. Zvinova zvaita kuti tite gungano ratiri kuita nhasi tichirangarira umwe wedu Regina Kumbula wekumvuma anga aine makore 35 akaurawa nomurume wake mushure mekunge apromisiwa kuti aizowana 5,000 kana achinge atengesera vanhu vakanga vachida body parts aRegina. Mweya wake uzorore murugare netsitsi dzaMwari. We have many forms of gender-based violence dzinosanganisira domestic violence. Munova mu-domestic violence ndomatinowana muine mabehaviour ekutyisidzira, ekuvhundutsira, ekumanipulata, ekukuvadza, ekunyadzisira, ekubhlemana, kukuvadzana kana kutourayana chaiko. Forms of GBV imomo pane sexual harassment. Iyi inonyanyowanikwa kumabasa, kunzi kana uri mudzimai kana una mabhosi evanhurume kana uchida promotion tanga wandida. Pamwe pacho uchitoda basa racho unotombonzi carpet interview, kana kungoactirwa zvimwe zvausinganzwisisi, kana kutaurirwa mamwe mashoko ausinganzwisisi pabasa, mashoko anenge mai ava vari kudonhedza musika, munhu akatokudero musungise. Harassment iyoyo ndio inonzi sexual harassment. Mashoko iwaya munonzwa achitaurwa iwaya kuti kwanzi muri mese here nevari kumashure kwenyu. That's sexual harassment. Vanhu ivavo ngavasungwe. Also pane nyaya dzestalking iripozve pamaforms of GBV ipapo. iyoyi nyaya iyi ndo ine mhirizhonga yakanyanyisa kuwanda. Unonzwa munhu achiti bhebhi wangu unondida, 2 minutes anenge achindifonera achinditi bhebhi uripi, bhebhi uri kuitei. Inotori stalking yaanenge achiita iyoyo, ari kutokustoka. Iva nefreedom yekuti kana waenda kwawaenda waenda, kwete kuti munhu anenge achikubvunza kuti uri kuitei, uri papi, unaani, mazodini. Pamwe pacho anotokuteverera chihwande usingatozivi kuti ndiri kutevererwa, achitokumonita achida kuona kuti unotaura chokwadi here paunenge uri chaipo. Ukamira newawamira naye uchimhorosa, pamwe schoolmate yako yawakambodzidza nayo ikakumhorosa, wotozobvunzwa wava kumba manheru, pamaenda kutauni paya mazodiniko, matii muri kuenda kuchicken slice, pamabva kuchicken slice pamabuda ikoko mazodini. Izvo iye ari kukuchovhera kuti utaura kuti ndazosangana neschoolmate yangu tikazomira tikazomhorosana. Mushure mekutaura izvozvo zvatova zvibhakera, unofamba uchimhorosana nevanhurume. Wazonyengwa nekuti wanga wakapfeka mini, akuda kutoti iwewo ufile bad kuti ndakapfeka ndo zvazoita kuti nditaurirwe mashoko asiriwo, kana kuti ndazodiniko. Stalking ndo imwe nengozi dzakanyanyisa dzekuurayana kwevanhu, zvekuti munhu anenge achikuteverera muchihwande usingambozivi kuti ndiri kutevererwa, kana kutsvakira vanhu vanokuteverera iwe wototi kwai baba vekwangu vanondida zvisingambobviri. Maiwe ndodiwa kani ezvokwani mainhiya.
Also on our show, we have Mfaro Jonasi to explain more on GBV. Mfaro Jonasi is a UZ law student. You explain to us more on the issues pertaining to GBV. Over to you, Mfaro.
Hello and good afternoon. My name is Mfaro Jonasi. I'm a part-time law student at the University of Africa, and I'm also an employee at the city of Gweru under the Department of Housing and Community Services. I'm somebody who's passionate about social justice and family law. Much of my work involves working towards achieving social equality and reducing the inequalities that exist in our societies. Most of these inequalities do manifest in gender-based violence, and gender-based violence actually manifests much more than often in domestic and social setups. So domestic and social setups involve people who have some kind of connected relationship. Maybe they are dating, maybe they are married, or maybe it's an uncle and a nephew, a father and a daughter. And this is where much of gender-based violence occurs. So in order to provide relief for the injustice that was happening, the Parliament of Zimbabwe decided to enact the Domestic Violence Act, Chapter 5.16. So this act actually provides relief for victims of domestic violence in social setups. So there is a very, very, very wide definition of what domestic violence actually covers. It does not only cover physical violence, like assault. It also covers sexual abuse, emotional and psychological abuse, economic abuse, threatening to deprive one's income. It also involves intimidation. It also involves harassment, stalking, malicious damage to property. It also involves forcible entry into the complainant's house where the people are not staying together. It also involves unreasonable disposal of household property which the complainant has an interest. It also furthermore involves abuse derived from cultural practices, forced marriages, child marriages, pledging of women to appease the spirits. So this is like a wide definition of what domestic violence actually covers. And the biggest relief that is found for the victims of domestic violence is what is known as a protection order. So a protection order is applied at the civil court in any jurisdiction in Zimbabwe, any civil court. So one approaches the clerk of the court and then they apply for that protection order. So they need to go to the court with also an affidavit which has been signed or certified and notarized by a commissioner of oaths or a lawyer. So the next question is, who can apply for that protection order? Is it like the victim themselves or the complainant, or do they have to find a lawyer? The answer is anyone can apply for a protection order on behalf of the victim. So if, let's say, I see my friend who is my neighbor who is experiencing emotional abuse from her boyfriend, as a friend, I can actually go to the civil courts alongside her and apply for a protection order. I can also apply for a protection order if I see that a girl from my church or a girl from my school or a workmate is also experiencing domestic violence or gender-based violence. Also, social workers or social caregivers, people who work for NGOs, they can go to the courts and apply for protection orders on behalf of the victims. And whenever you are applying for a protection order without the assistance of a lawyer, the clerk of court is supposed to actually give you a list of the relief that is available for you, whether you get financial damages as well, and furthermore to the protection order. So the protection order is a very, very simple procedure. Anyone can apply for it, and it only takes 48 hours for it to be granted. So what is granted in 48 hours is what is called an interim protection order. So an interim protection order is granted at the first instance of application, where the court, in its opinion, feels that, okay, if this person or this lady is not given protection immediately, she's going to suffer further damage or further harm. So I'll give you a particular example whereby, like, let's say you are dating somebody and then you break up with them, and then they hit you for that, and they continue stalking you and maybe continue to be a nuisance if you don't take them back. If you go to the civil courts and then you apply for a protection order, an interim protection order is actually released in 48 hours, and then it is actually released or granted alongside a warrant of arrest, such that if in that time after the interim order has been given, if the perpetrator or the ex-boyfriend continues to harass you, then you report to the police. That person will be immediately arrested. So pending that interim protection order, a court date is set whereby the complainant herself is supposed to appear before a magistrate or a judge and offer evidence as to the harm she's been experiencing. And right after that, the judge or the magistrate reaches a decision whereby she passes a verdict to grant a protection order, which is usually for 5 years. It can be extended, it can also be revoked, but under extenuating or aggravating circumstances, it is usually advisable to let the protection order run its course. So this is something that is very pertinent for us to know, and for us to advise our friends out there who I feel like strongly that are very, very vulnerable, because most of the people, they suffer silently, and because they don't know that they have such an easy course to justice. Of all the procedures that you can apply for in court, the protection order is actually the most simplest and the least complicated. So yeah, unless if I can be of further assistance or if there are any questions, I think this kind of like sums it up for the course of justice that victims of domestic based violence can actually receive. Thank you.
GBV remains a pandemic. Women and girls in particular are always victims. I hope that we have all learned something from the show. Thank you so much, Jonasi and Marjorie. Let's all report domestic violence issues. We should all know that domestic violence is not good for our society. No to domestic violence, no to ritual killings. We are all humans. We as women, we are humans. Please treat us as your sisters, as your mothers. Thank you, everyone. Let's keep safe. Let's maintain social distance, and always know that COVID is real. Mask up and always sanitize. Bye-bye.